Dear newly deconverted atheists, congratulations on your recently acquired freedom from whatever religion you've left behind. This can be an interesting, anxious, exciting, and/or scary time for you depending on your individual personality and circumstances. While those who make this transition do so with varying degrees of grace, I have general recommendations for how to handle it. This advice is, of course, personal and subjective. Take it with a grain of salt as one man's opinion who's gone through this variation you're making in one way, with one personality and in one set of circumstances. Though I've also interacted with a large number of other people while or after going through it, and I think I may have some things to share that you could benefit from. For starters, just because you're officially an atheist in your mind doesn't mean you've declared it to the world yet. You have to carefully consider when, how, and if you will choose to come out as an atheist, depending on your age, dependency on family, and the way it may affect your livelihood. Though keep in mind that a large part of why atheism reigns as taboo as it is in the United States is that so many people are afraid to come out. With every person who summons the courage to be open and honest about their disbelief, it gets that much easier for the next person. Obviously, I post videos on YouTube anonymously because I'm a public school teacher, and such videos of a teacher discussing atheism and other controversial topics has and can cause a massive distraction to classrooms in an age where the average student is carrying a smartphone with access to the internet. Despite that, I remain an open atheist. If a student, employer, parent, or anyone else asks me about my religion, I answer them honestly and move on. When and only when you feel safe, confident, and comfortable, I would advise you to do the same. On the other end of the spectrum, some people are so gung-ho about their atheism, especially when they're new to it, that they feel the need to obnoxiously parade it and shout it from the rooftops if given half the opportunity. While I get that you may be happy with yourself for escaping religion, it doesn't mean you have to bring it up to everyone you meet or force it into every conversation. I would recommend finding a balance between being completely closeted and obnoxiously outspoken. In my personal life, I almost never bring up religion or my lack thereof in conversation, especially when I'm meeting someone new. This has a few benefits, not the least of which is safeguarding me from that person's prejudices they may have based on a misconception of what atheism is. It may be months or years until friends or acquaintances ask me about my religion, and some are flabbergasted when they learn I don't believe in God. Their minds are forced to reconcile their prejudices with what they know to be true about the kind of person I am at that point. Then they have a slew of genuine questions that I'm happy to answer, because at that point they're more interested in understanding me and my position than they are in dismissing me. Speaking of dismissing people, I'd strongly urge you to keep in mind that arriving at the conclusion that the claims of religion are nonsensical and no longer satisfy your standard of evidence in no way makes you superior in moral fiber or intellect to theists. This should be obvious, but it's one of the most frequent mistakes I observe, and it's damaging to fellow atheists because there's enough of a misconception about us without people giving us additional reputations as smug, condescending, or worst of all, prejudice against religious people. Understand that intelligence involves a wide variety of mental skill sets and talents, abilities. Intelligence isn't just a linear bar from 0 to 100, somewhere on which you cross over from stupid to smart when you stop believing in God. If intelligence were such a simple concept to chart, a fair point against which to measure one's transcendence into intellectual superiority would not be simply not believing in God, which is rather rudimentary, or even reasoning one's way out of ardent religious indoctrination, though that's much more mentally challenging than never believing the claim to begin with. You may deserve to feel proud of yourself for climbing out of that quagmire of religion, but I implore you to keep in perspective that you're still just a regular person like anyone else, who's come to what I agree is a more rational conclusion on one issue than what most people have. Just remember that it doesn't imbue you with any other properties, including intellect, and likewise, being religious doesn't instantly make someone stupid. Please conduct yourself accordingly. Many people break free of religion and look back at how guilty or repressed it made them feel, or they really examine the vitriol found in something like the parts of Christian scripture that their pastors shielded them from, or just regard the years of wasted time they spent on their knees being duped, and it makes them angry. That's an acceptable human emotion for a brief time, but if you feel resentment for religion, do your best to control it. Don't become someone who has to attach religion to the majority of negative things on the entire planet, or make everything about it. Resist feeling bitter about the religion from which you've escaped, and focus on enjoying your freedom. No, it's not your duty to suddenly rush right back into the prison from which you escaped and start throwing blind punches at the guards. A lot of newly deconverted people jump into one of the oldest arguments of all time without having explored them or prepared themselves for the nuances they can expect to encounter. Just because you happen to be right about something doesn't mean any argument you make for it is a high-quality one, and you can do more harm than good if you're making facile, uninformed arguments for your cause. If you have a newfounded interest in religious rhetoric, then that's great, but do yourself a favor and listen to both sides of it for a while before you whip out your megaphone. Now, don't mistake any of these points for telling you to keep your mouth shut and act as a pincushion for the theist majority. Of course, you're just as entitled to express your discontent with religion as they are to spread religious propaganda, although it's nearly humorous to see how many religious people find it perfectly acceptable for them to condemn you to eternal hellfire as a wretched heathen, but consider it unacceptably disrespectful just for you to explain why you don't believe what they said. Now, just know that you're representing a misunderstood minority, and some people spend their entire lives never having the concept of religion questioned by themselves or anyone else. It's as absurd in their minds as questioning if oxygen exists. You may be the first or only atheist they ever meet, and it may be more effective to ask them thought-provoking questions in a sincere, open-minded tone and listen to them than in what it is to bitterly mock them, confirming any fraction of their negative prejudices. Now, of course, the majority should never consider one person a representation of every other member of that minority, but we don't live in a world where things necessarily happen as they should. So sometimes it's best to think a little bigger than yourself, and if you're going to start waving your atheist flag around, then do it with some class.